about anything? Why is it that somebody who hears about something concerning a third party is now offended for them, and that rises to the level of a House investigation? The forces that be, because they have said very clearly, and you've heard it in the newspaper, you've seen it in the press, that the future of the Democratic Party rests on passing this health care bill. They could get anyone to say anything about me concerning anything at all. And in fact, they did, because just recently, on my friend Rob Lonsberry's radio program, on his blog, remember the guy who a month ago was saying what a good guy he was? He wrote an entire blog about sexual misconduct allegations against me while I was in the Navy. Yeah, that's what he said. You want to know what they were? I got them right here in front of me, in color, in black and white. How many of you have ever crossed the line? How many of you have ever gone on the equator? The United States Navy, for a century, has had a tradition, where when you cross the line, those who are not initiated are then initiated. It's called polywogs and shellbacks. I got someone here. Come here, look at these pictures. You tell me. Pick up the microphone. Now, this is one of my prized possessions. It is the cruise book from the USS New Jersey. This is a deployment I made in 1983 and 1984. It was a year-long deployment. We went to Beirut, and that year was one of the most intense of my life. It was the year that I witnessed the death of my Naval Academy roommate, just literally within arm's reach, figuratively, of me when I was in Beirut. This is our cruise book. We took the polywogs, those who had never crossed the line. They went through chutes full of garbage, many of them naked. They had to stick their faces in the crotches of the holy crew, the guys that come aboard from King Triton. We had a drag contest. People walking around with things that could only marginally be described as grossly obscene looked through the lens of 2001. This was the 1980s. Does this go completely against what our norms and ethics are today? Absolutely.
Can I just say, Eric, that I'm looking at the official yearbook for the USS Dreadnought 83-84. These are full-color photos, properly published and printed. And
this is what was published.
Yeah, and it's certainly not a... the only person featuring here is certainly not you. There are probably...
I was there.
The whole crew's there.
The whole crew was there. I make no bones about it. The United States Navy in 1983 and 1984 was an incredible body. Incredible. And then there's the case of someone, because it's always anonymous, who anonymously said, I misconducted myself while on deployment. Well, let me tell you a little story about that. And I'm going to keep this as family-oriented as I could. I was on a ship. It was in the Persian Gulf. It was during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. I was standing port and starboard watches. 4 hours on, 4 hours off. I had a roommate. By the way, you ever seen a stateroom on a ship, you'll know it's room for bunk beds, a pull-down shelf, and a sink. And that's it. You literally can't move two people in that room.
Very small state.
It's a very small state. Without getting into each other's knickers. You can't. I got off watch early. There were two of us living in there. We were both married. We were both in our early 20s. Actually, I was older because I was a department head. I was a lieutenant commander. And I arrived back early from that and opened the door, and not to put quite a light on it, but the other gentleman was busy remembering his spouse, and I'll let your imaginations run wild. And I walked in, and instead of embarrassing him, I smacked him on the leg, said, you need any help with that, let me know, and I went to bed. And he was so hideously embarrassed, he moved out of the stateroom because he couldn't take it. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been at sea for 4 months. This is 1991, so let me get it straight. In the decades of the 80s, I offended someone. In the decades of the 90s, I offended someone. And this is what it comes down to on Bob Lonsberry, but here's the absolute hilarity of this situation. Here's the irony. By attacking me, people like Bob Lonsberry ensure that the health care debate that we have been raging for a year, and this bill that I have been fighting against since day one, is in fact going to pass because he was too ignorant of the facts to realize that it was a setup. And that's not me speaking. That's the Associated Press. That's Roll Call magazine. Now, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm holding myself to a higher standard because there's no doubt, folks, that in the privacy of my home and in the privacy of my inner office, my language was inappropriate. But when I voted against the cap and trade bill, the phone rang, and it was the Chief of Staff to the President of the United States of America, Rahm Emanuel. And he started swearing at me in terms and words that I hadn't heard since that crossing the line ceremony on the USS New Jersey in 1983. And I gave it right back to him in terms and words that I know are physically impossible. I told him to do things that I know the human anatomy cannot do. There's no doubt in my mind. And then it got quiet. And I said, Rahm, let's have a conversation. You pretend that you're the Chief of Staff to the President of the United States of America, and I'm a sitting member of Congress. And he said, there's no reason for you to swear at me. I said, you're the one that unlit on me first, and I'm going to give as good as I get. So if Rahm Emanuel wants to come after me, maybe he ought to hold himself to the same standards I'm holding myself to and resign. Here's a letter I've received. It's one of hundreds. Let me just read this to you. This is what it's like today out there, just so you know.